is costs in general. It's who does that money come from? It comes from your parents, from the people in this community. There is no ethereal money tree. This comes from your parents. So when they could have bought you an Xbox, now they can't because their taxes went up to pay for you being stupid and destroying and putting 666 on a bathroom wall. So connect the dots for them, because too many kids have no ability to connect those dots.
Great.
Yep. One of the things I like about meeting together like this in a retreat in a little casual way, although it's a public meeting, and I'm going to have Cassie here in just a minute, turn the recording's going, is that we can have some discussion like this that isn't agendized, because I think it helps us understand what the issues are that the staff is facing. Now, you'll notice that Noah is not here, and you'll notice that Garrett is not here. Corinne, this is to your comment about teaching them sex.
Oh, okay.
We learned that Garrett doesn't know about the birds and bees at our lunch. And
Even though he has kids. Uh-oh.
Yeah, Garrett doesn't know anything about chickens and the birds and the bees. So Noah is instructing him on a farm life, on how chickens get pregnant and how they get fertilized. So we'll go on. I'm glad we're recording that. Brody, you want to start us off now?
Well, on that note,
No better education.
I need a couple of witnesses that was actually the topic of our discussion.
yes, that was our lunch chat.
I can tell you, I taught my children a lot by, hey, look, this cow is giving birth. Let's come watch. They learned a lot. Anyway, sorry.
Okay.
All right, back to business. Is Robert on?
Yeah, I'm on now. So,
And Brody, I'm going to go clean up our mess.
Thanks, Mayor.
so council, welcome back. I think this capital projects discussion will probably be less shorter than what the agenda is anticipating. I've only got 3 slides, so pretty simple, straightforward this year. A large portion of our capital projects is going to areas that will be impacted with West Davis corridor, and that's what this first slide is showing. There are some areas that the West Davis corridor will impact that's not shown on this slide, and I'll just mention those. Those will just be utility crossings underneath West Davis. We've mentioned that to you before in a previous meeting, just where we're putting dry pipe underneath the corridor so that pipe in the future could be slipped through or connected to it. So, and that would be for like storm drain or sewer, just drainage type stuff, nothing pressure. So, okay. On this slide, it's about $4 million total is what we're looking. The different colors just represents the different utilities. So the green is the sewer. The yellow is a land drain. We've found that there's a large amount of water that comes down through Huckleberry that we'd love to capture into our secondary water system. We have the well, if we had a pipe connection, we would have the ability to do that. So that's a short little piece there. And then culinary water and secondary water, those are in blue there. And then the black is just road only, and that's 3000 West, widen the east side of that road. So that's what's shown on this slide, $4 million price tag. This is something we've had on the 5-year capital plan for about the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. And we put it on there knowing that it was coming, just so we can plan for it. And it's looking like, well, I do know it's in design currently right now with Farmington Bay Constructors design build team. Their plan is they would like to begin construction this July. So that's kind of a schedule for you.
When will they start moving utilities? So I know there's a lot of utilities along that road. They do that before that, or that'd be part of the July construction.
That's part of the July construction. Okay. As you know, the Layton Canal pipeline has already been relocated, and that's in service. Now I think they're just finishing up some of the other ancillary impacts, particularly the like 3000 West where they crossed. They've got some utility repairs to do to the sewer, storm drain, and water lines. So, and then they'll repave the road. That's supposed to happen next week, and then open up right after that. That should open a section of the trail too, by the way, Cresta. So for a short time until they close it back down again to do more construction. So I don't know the timing on the construction of the actual corridor north of Antelope yet. Okay, so that's the big project that's this year. This next slide, we kind of talked about it early. Seth brought this up. This is 1100 South. That's not why we put this slide in here. But this has actually been on our 5-year plan for more than 5 years. This was one of the roads that we identified alongside of a lot of the other roads that were in bad shape. I think it's probably been on our 5-year plan for 6 or 7 years. So it's finally kind of come to the surface. So all of the different colors here again are the different utilities. So it would basically include all of the utilities in this section. So the road and the utilities are they're old and they really just need to be replaced. So that's a $2 million price tag there, 2.2. So that's slated for this budget cycle, which again could start this July, or most likely we would probably bid it out this winter, like January timeframe, and then build it next summer. Because we get better bids when we bid during the winter, and then a contractor has a full summer to schedule the work. All right. And this is the last slide, and this just so happened to be the one Dave brought up too. So you all are just right on top of this. It's not something that we've ignored. Doral Drive definitely needs road repair from 2700 South up to 2200 South. When was it? It was probably back in 2015, maybe 2014 timeframe. We had the high density mineral bond placed on some of the little cul-de-sacs that are connected to this Doral Drive. And at that time, we asked if they would also do Doral Drive, and the company said, no, it's not in a good enough condition to do any good to put the surface bond on top of this section of Doral Drive, because even at that time, it was cracked up quite a bit. So it really just needs an overlay, and that's what this is. It's $500,000 for an overlay in that section. So it's definitely well needed, and it's also been on the 1 to 5 year plan. It wasn't something we just threw on there. Okay, that's really it for capital projects. Seems small and simple, but like I say, a lot of it's taken up because West Davis is kind of this is the timing for it. So we do. I've spoken about this before. You know, there's been questions about when's 1000 West gonna be scheduled. You know, that's always kind of come up to the forefront, and it's been on the plan again for a long time. It's a high cost. It does have some storm drain, which is a fund that is struggling. But we do have land drain on 1000 West that it's imperative that we get that repaired. It's clay pipe, and I could probably show you a little piece of clay pipe if you're interested. I don't know if you can see this. I can't see myself, so I don't know.
Yeah.
We can.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, So this is the actual clay pipe that is in 1000 West. We had to replace a section of it because it broke out. But it is very brittle and there's no gaskets. They literally just butt one end up next to another. So it leaks like a sieve.
Wow.
And the location of it is literally inside in people's front yards,
Ooh,
not even in the roadway. So it's really dangerous to have where it's at right now. It has a great potential for flooding out basements and creating a big liability.
I just think it's funny you have that in your living room.
Well, I'm in,
Is this an artistic feature that you've added to your house?
it's office.
I'm in my office.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I have all sorts of fun. You got to come over sometime. So
I'm gonna have to.
I got.
I've been over to take the tour and it's well worth the price of admission. Let me just tell you.
It's like the jar of tire puncture
yeah.
things at the tire store. You got to
Nails.
collect them just to show.
Or the display shelf at the
Oh, I can
sewer
see that.
district.
Yeah.
So this is also something that I've collected. This came from a land drain main
Sediment?
where minerals will settle to the bottom of the pipe and plug up the pipe, so you can kind of see the curvature of the pipe here and
Oh.
how much mineral deposit there is in those land drain lines. Now, land drains is just groundwater, right? It's just shallow groundwater, but they carry a lot of minerals with it. And this is hard, like concrete. It's really difficult to remove. Anyway, yeah, if you ever want to come down, I've got a whole bunch of other stuff too.
You didn't show me that stuff, Robert, when I came for the tour.
Come on down.
I kind of want a refund.
All right. Tell you what, Seth, we'll put your road on the capital project.
Thank you. That was kind of you. 6 years out, right?
6 years.
It got bumped because of 2000. I mean.
All right, so
You can't park in your
other
driveway for a summer.
any other questions or comments on this upcoming year's capital projects?
Looks like chaos.
Well, it looks good.
Along Antelope, at least.
Yeah, our city's gonna be Orange Cone City, I think, for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So,
Really important communication, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
just
keep the website and social media updated, and then magazine article. So I've already put there will be an article in the May magazine just saying that people can sign up with the notify me and get notifications on the fly as they come up. So
Good.
Thanks,
all
Robert.
right. Steve, do you want to go through our impact fee and wrap tax funds?
Sure. So the rest of these 5 or 6 slides are just our remaining funds, or covers a variety of funds. Wrap tax, I'm not going to read all these. You can see the projects on there. These are just the major ones we're going to do this year with Stoker and Fremont Park. Public safety impact. Again, we talked about this before, but using a one-time $230,000 infusion into our general fund budget to help cover the cost that we're going to pay to the county for the paramedic service, to keep that flat over 2 years. And then we're looking at updating our public safety impact fee in the next year's budget as well. Secondary impact, we have the Bluff Road improvements that Robert just talked about. Culinary, the only major thing in there this year is the payment of our bonds that we took out for the water tank. Next slide. CDAs, RDAs, and EDAs, you can see there. CDA, we just started collecting that this year. We just got our first payment here in March. It was about $57,000. We used about 8,000 of that to reimburse the RDA for the setup costs. So we have about $50,000 sitting in there. And And that will collect over time. And part of that will help pay for incentives that we've already agreed to. We'll have to come up with some ideas on how to improve or use that money in that CDA area in the future. RDA, we've talked about the repayment for Bluff Ridge Drive. This is the Thane and Gertz projects over by Latrano. And then the parking lot improvements in the town center we've talked about. EDA, no significant improvements over there. That fund, everything we collect, we disperse each year, and whatever money we do collect and don't, and we either pay to US Coal or we pay back to the developer, Nanogrid.
Hey, Steve, when are we done with the Gertz payment for the fun center? Because that should be really soon.
It is one more year, I think in 2022 budget. There might be two more. I could check.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's one or two.
I was hoping we were done. Okay.
Yeah, we have one in this 2022 budget. I think that's it.
Okay.
Capital fund. This is we split this between the projects and the vehicles and equipment. In the capital projects portion, you can see here our list of items that we're going to try to get completed. EOC upgrades are in this year's budget, as well as the retaining wall. So if we get that done, it's just I don't know if we'll get them done by June 30th. So there's a carryover there. We talked about all these other ones in Crestis projects. Next slide. Vehicle and equipment. Chief talked about the ladder truck and the brush truck, also the paramedic services. And in addition to that, we do have on our replacement plan 4 police vehicles, about $210,000 total for those 4 vehicles. And then Chief Byington also talked about the micro grant in his presentation as well. Next slide. IT fund. The only major change request I have this year is to increase our hours from 20 to 25 hours a week as the city grows. We do have 1 full-time person in-house doing a lot of the day-to-day stuff, but I have seen a need more and more for our back-end help as far as Executech goes. And even 5 hours will go a long way to help accomplish some of the goals we're looking at doing. And then we're well on our way with our computer replacement. And we are going to knock the rest of that out in the next fiscal year. If you remember, we did that over 2 fiscal years. And our next phase of our cameras, we felt like the best place to do that would be Founders Park. The only building we don't have cameras in now is the fire department. I'm not too worried about them at this point. There's people always there. To me, I see a greater need with Founders, especially with all of our improvements we just did over there, to find out a way to, survey that park and make sure we protect some of our investments.
We talked about putting cameras over there many years ago and actually approved it. And then it just kind of fell apart. It was under a different IT person at that time.
This is phase 4. So we actually have started that.
So do we have them of the skate park already then?
A while back, we had a camera on one of the poles over there. It's no longer used.
A camera. Okay.
But yeah, we talked about putting a camera up on the cell tower.
Right.
We could do a wireless point to point over to the restroom and set one on the restroom looking outward, or on a pavilion looking outward, to try and capture activity in and around that new area. And we could do it to both the east and west side if we had enough funds to do it. So we'll come up with a plan on how to do that. And
there was a reprioritization too. So we put, if you recall, we put cameras over at the splash pad when we approved that, and then
yes,
we started putting them at the community center because a lot goes on there.
Right.
the police station, and so we Founders Park kind of got pushed back on the priority list.
Speaking of the camera over at the community center, did you guys ever recover that garden trailer that was stolen?
No, we
did not.
Dang it. Awful people.
I think that's.
Don't we have a trailer that's being used for, or that used to be used for farmers market?
that the one over at Rock Creek?
I mean, could we repurpose that?
Yes.
Yep.
Just knowing if the farmer's market ever comes back, they'd probably need a trailer.
Not a bad thought.
Ain't better than sitting and collecting, dust or rust or whatever.
Yeah, I agree.
They're better to be in use.
But
Better
Yeah, and
maintained.
right now Noah's been great with letting us use that, Dave. We've been using
Okay.
it for rec. So
Okay, good.
yeah, you might have seen it over at Rock Creek being used by Park and Rec.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions on those funds, those other budgets? Okay. I'll go through some of the other items. So these are items, kind of the major items. We did discuss a few smaller items that were kind of in the $5,000 to $7,000 range, but these are some of the major items that were other considerations that we discussed that did not make it into this proposed budget. I wanted to make sure we had time to review those with you. One thing I want to make sure the council remembers is this is your budget at the end of the day. The staff is here to help you, but the adopted budget is the council's budget, and as the elected officials of our city. And we are not going to get offended if you make changes or do different things because it's at the end of the day, it's not our budget. It's our budget after you adopt it to take care of. So it's your house. If you ask us to take our shoes off, we'll take our shoes off. So we talked about the traffic safety unit. What we have here is the general estimate and the associated additional property tax. If we were to fund that, what that would require. There's an asterisk by the traffic safety unit because we can assume that there will be some revenue generated by a traffic safety unit in the form of tickets. What we don't know is how much. So we put the full amount there just to show you what the impact is, knowing that there would probably be a revenue side of that equation. We can provide research. Garrett and I have talked about just kind of gathering data from other cities that have traffic safety units and what their experience is on revenue related to that. We don't focus on that a lot because that's not the purpose of a traffic safety unit. You don't put a traffic safety unit in to make or generate money. Cities in the past have done that, but that's not what you want to do. It's for the safety of the traveling public. That's why you have it.
Brody, was the whole 405 ongoing?
So, well, yes and no.
No.
I mean,
There'd
vehicles.
be vehicles.
Yeah, vehicles get replaced every now and then. So that it's not 405 every year. So if we were to, do you have that off the top of your head, Garrett? I can go back to the slide.
I know you had it, yeah, in the beginning. I was just trying to remember if like the 4320 would be.
There would be roughly, let's say about 260,000 that probably is not, or that, let's see, I apologize for that, other way around. There would be about 230,000 probably that's ongoing.
Okay, so
Staffing, yeah.
just over half. What about say the carpet? Why is that put in per year? Because are we planning on continually rotating carpet? Or
Yeah, no, that would be just like the impact for 1 year. That's not an ongoing thing. Yeah, that's just to give you an idea of what that costs.
So to get the revenue for the 405 as well, that would be some mix of, I guess like you're saying, Brody, we do need to consider that there's a rotating cost that's not necessarily annualized, but 405 would be there at some point again in the next maybe 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, as you replace a vehicle, and then the future cost of the vehicle. So Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily have to do the 4320. I guess is what I'm saying. That's just a representation of what this cost is.
I want to speak really quick about the museum curator, because I have to just let you know that they've had over 1,200 people come through their museum despite it being COVID, which is amazing. They have that Harvest Host program where people get to park in their parking lot and they give them a free tour of the museum. And ironically, most people who stay there are not headed to Antelope Island. Most of them have been on their way south to the national parks, and they're just looking for a quiet, safe place to park overnight. And so in the meantime, then the museum people who volunteer there have let them know about all the things in Syracuse to do and go to, and including the island. And they've had several comments how they appreciate it being right next to the police department and the park right next door for the kids, and that Walmart's right over there to shop at, get some supplies before they head back out to go to like Zion's or whatever down south. So anyway, I just want to say they are working their tails off. And I know that Dean Hill, who has been their museum board president for the last few years, he's actually said he's done if they don't get a full-time curator. And I'm just worried about getting pilfered again. If the curator, like last year, had Annie and she's fabulous. And now we've got, luckily, Elizabeth Najim, and I just see these gals getting picked off, and they're so wonderful and helping us to actually fulfill the goals we have as a city to bring people here. They're actually doing it and promoting everything in our city, and then we kind of like poo-poo them. So I just want to plug that they're an amazing group, especially since most of them are volunteers and you got one part-time person doing their job. So just a thought.
Yeah, and if you recall, they came in for the budget request. That's why we have it in here for you to consider. There's there's two options that we have, and whenever we do budgeting, we can make room by trimming somewhere else, or we can find the revenue somewhere to add something, and so that's where that's the trade-off in making these decisions. So I guess the discussion here, the question for the council is, any other changes you want to make to the proposed budget as it stands in any area? And these are the items that are significant, that have significant costs that we can deal with.
Brody, I'd really like to see, and I'm sure you have it, but not on a slide right now. I'd really like to see this same format as to some of the things that made it into the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some of the new positions and stuff, what that impact is for the additional tax year. You just suggested that if you feel like something needs to be in, that may mean something needs to come out. If we had that data, then maybe it would be easier to suggest what that might be. And I am not poo-pooing the museum. I'm just saying that if we're going to add that, which I'm not saying yes or no, I'm just, where does that come from? So
Agreed. Yeah, it's a tough.
Maybe that what I've just suggested you show us would be a place that we could go look.
Yeah, so just kind of as a rule of thumb, as we look at some of these, if you take the 40K, you can take about 10% of that is, $4.26. There's kind of a ratio there. So if something's, $80,000, then it's about $8 a year. So that's kind of a quick and dirty way to estimate the property tax price, if you will.
Because of the about 10,000 homes.
Say again. Yeah.
Because of the 10,000 homes.
Yeah, it's roughly based on the assessed value, the average assessed value. So
And this is just one-time tax money. This is not monthly at all. Just
this
making
is yearly. Yeah.
yearly. Just wanted to clarify. Okay.
Yeah. So
But Dave, if you look on what page is this of our slide deck, page 4 of the slide deck, they have a lot of the ads for this year. If that's what you're looking for a bulleted list,
Yeah.
or you can go to page 4 of your presentation, Brody.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, the one up from that.
There we go. Yeah. So
Okay, I see where you're going with that. I didn't make the connection of the roughly 10% because it wasn't there in front of me, but I guess, yeah, I can do that.
Now we do have. Let me come back here. Why that changed? Let me come to the next slide because we can discuss what we do have as far as property tax.
You're not sharing anymore, Brody.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna bring it back up here. So here's what we do have in terms of the property tax in this draft. So the total tax increase dollar wise, if you follow along here, starts with 450,000. That's about a 16.1%.
You need to share, Brody.
It's still not sharing?
No.
It's,
Oh.
Man,
You have a problem with sharing, Brody?
I got a problem with sharing.
You got to bring it up for everyone.
Yeah. Kidding.
Kindergarten rules, Brody. Come on, man.
That is true.
You bring your slides for everyone.
Okay. How about now?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Everybody
Now
gets
we
some.
can follow along with you.
Thank you. All right. So basically the proposed property tax increase, what's really driving it is the paramedic addition.
Right.
And so everything else is pretty much covered without the additional tax increase.
Wow.
Correct me if I'm creating any holes, Steve, if there's any caveats to that.
Oh, that's correct.
So
Dang, county, they messed us up.
it starts with 450,000, which is a 16.1% increase, which is about a $48 increase per home, average home.
Okay.
Then the county has committed to reduce the paramedic tax levy. For Syracuse City, that's about 230,000 that our homes and businesses generate to the county. So they would reduce that on our property, on our residents' property tax, not the city property tax.
Right. So how much reduction
So
does that
yeah.
actually equal number wise, like dollar wise?
Yeah, so the net effect is a $220,000
Oh, okay.
dollar increase, which is 7.8%. And really, at 7.8%, you're getting into the realm of like just holding the rate.
Right. Especially with the increase in value of homes.
Yeah. So it's a $23.70 increase estimate on the average home when it's all said and done. Because remember, the county's going to drop their paramedic tax. We are picking it up, but there's a net effect to the resident also because they see a drop and then they see an increase, but that's a net zero. And then on top of that is the 220,000 for the city paramedics.
Is it next year that they will change the animal control stuff?
Yeah, they said they're not going to do anything with that until next year.
They have to raise their fees, so they have to notice in November. So they've already missed the boat for this year. They'd have to do it next year.
Okay.
Couple things to note with this too. This $347,000 is the average price last year, so that's probably going to go up to like 700,000.
Oh my gosh.
So that amount will change. Also, just keep in the back of your mind, we still have to request for the full amount. So when we go through truth and taxation, we can give the citizens this information, but we still have to show on the truth and taxation ad the full 16%, $48 per home. The county should reduce their tax. Obviously, we can't make them, but I think in communicating with them, that's their plan. And lastly, I don't know, Brody, if you want to bring this up, but the county has just confirmed, I believe, that they're going to use part of the rescue plan money to pay that $230,000 one time to cover that cost. So if that happens, we now have $230,000 in the budget to work with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because remember, we were gonna pay the county
Right.
$230,000
Right.
for paramedic service while the cities are ramping up over the next year. They said they agreed that they will cover that cost so that we the cities can actually more easily get ramped up.
Can we put whatever we decide on? Can we put these types of bullet points in a big ad in the city news magazine so that people can realize that, hey, there's this paramedic thing going on and we're not going to just try to fleece you for everything, that there is an exchange happening.
We're even thinking maybe it deserves a a flyer or something to each home, because there is a story that has to be told. It's a little complicated, right?
Right.
So,
And Brody, is there formalized tax language that's going to go out on their actual assessment? It's going to be very convoluted, like it was with the park bond.
Yeah.
it'll be confusing.
And that's where it's gonna, yeah.
So for them, where they're technically reducing their tax, they don't have to do anything. I hope that they communicate that on their end, but
Are we still going to do an open forum town hall meeting? I know that kind of got put on the back burner, it seems. Were we still going to do something like that? This could be one of the discussion points.
Yeah.
Just not even bring up property taxes, but just tell them what's going on.
Yeah. And I think it'd be a good idea. Maybe we do an informational flyer.
Yeah.
And then also advertise that so
Right.
that people can discuss it with us.
And
Right.
that's, we have our vandalism thing too.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, we could have some pictures of the vandalism that's occurred over the last year where we can say, now, if this is the cost effect of this. And so to have a special meeting with your family about it.
To be fair, and just, to consider all sides of this, if we didn't add all of the things on our list, it would reduce the impact of the paramedic ad. Because I kind of feel like what I just watched was we added up all of the increases for the year and then took the paramedic as a whole and said, we're going to have to add this because it's paramedic. But we could have not taken as much of the other expenses and reduced that impact.
Yes.
one important note I got to make though, this 230,000 is going to be a one-time thing. So next year when we go to fund our 2023 budget, that 230 is not going to be there anymore.
I understand, but part of that we just talked about didn't we just say that 230 was the ongoing part of the traffic unit? So, we could say that we're only funding the one-time expenses because we could have used that 230 that we might get back to fund the ongoing, and then in future years we just fund the ongoing instead of the one-time costs. I'm just doing a little trading in my mind and saying, where do we, because it's not completely accurate to say to people that we're only raising for paramedic services when we add several other new things.
No,
Well,
and that's not, and what I mentioned is what's driving it, because the paramedics thing is, it's so large,
It is.
right? It's if you didn't have the paramedic thing, we wouldn't have to discuss any tax increase.
Well, and that's
Right.
probably why we framed it this way, because in a truth and taxation, this might be the easiest message to get across. It's for one thing, it's for this paramedic service. Yeah, you're right, Dave. We could go through and name out some other things and say a portion of the 450 was for paramedic and one was for, these other new positions. We just felt like this might be the easiest way to communicate a tax increase if we were to do it.
I agree with you. I'm just concerned that it's not entirely accurate.
Except for the fact that if the county weren't initiating it this year, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
But we've known for a whole year, we've been talking about the fact that we're going to have to be really thin this year because
Sure.
we know it's coming.
Sure, but I also need to acknowledge the fact that we've made some commitments to right size our wages. I mean, that's in code. I mean, we're
Agreed.
committed to doing that we are behind on several positions. And
I
so
agree. No, I
you know,
agree.
if you want to spell out every single one of them to the public, that's fine. But I do agree that a clean, simple message is the best way for people to understand that, hey, we wouldn't have this conversation if it weren't for the paramedics. we'd be covered. We'd be covered. We wouldn't be having a tax increase at all. We'd be like, oh, we're good.
Yeah, and you're right, Dave, and that's and that's not that it's not totally accurate. It's just that's not what we're saying. If you were to take all these other staffing requests that are added, yeah, you could trim back on what you have to add for paramedics. But what we are saying is that these other positions are also needed. That's the other side of that message.
That's what I'm trying to say too. And it's just a matter of, okay, if you want to give the public all the information, that's fine. But I do appreciate the simplicity of it.
We do need to be careful how we're talking about this, because I think it's always important to give the public all the information.
Yeah, and that's why it's all here, right?
Right.
Yeah,
I don't want to ever try and whitewash something,
No.
or not whitewash, kind of blur something by not including all the provisions and
So let me just kind of play this out a little bit, if you would let me. And that would be that, you take some of these things in years past, we've sat down, whether we use paper money or whether we use just discussion points. Some of the things that we've had to balance were, okay, the fire department is asking for extra for the fifth man. The police department's asking for an officer. The Parks and Rec are asking for a new person, and we can only have so much money. So we have to choose between them. I feel like a little bit, we didn't add the paramedics to one of our needs and spent everything we had on all of these other positions, where in years past, we probably would have said to some of these departments, you have to kind of choose, or one of you is going to have to wait till next year. So that's just where I'm going with this. I mean, for example, we have 4 positions, or at least 4 chunks of money, not all positions, but we've got money for extra building inspection, a full-time planner, and an engineering tech that's partially all in the same department. We've told the police before, I get it that you want 3 new officers, but you can't have all 3 because we just can't afford them.
Right, but the county's forcing our hand. There's no way to tell the county no.
I
So,
agree.
and these other needs aren't going to go away just because the county pushed this up. And so
But maybe we have to put some of them into next year, so because we just can't afford it all. Is this the right year to add a communications specialist when we already have to add 9 paramedics? I'm not trying to say that one is not necessary, but can we do them all in the same year? We've had years we had to tell Public Works, I can't
know.
add to your staff
I-
this year.
I'm totally aware.
Yeah,
what we've
so that's
had
just
to
where I'm
look
going
into.
with this discussion.
I'm just, and I agree that you be devil's advocate and saying, hey, we need to be very careful about how we're spending our money. I'm just saying that we've also put off these other departments for a long time. And so how long do we put them off again? Because we can't tell the paramedics, you got to wait.
I understand that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just saying, like, on ones, we've been able to tell you got to wait, but this one we can't. So do we tell our other ones, you still have to wait? That's,
I guess what I'm kind of hoping to get to is it possible that we told people we did what we could so that your tax increase was only $25, not $50, or
And-
whatever that number is?
and there might be something to that, but it's kind of like when we were considering like the increasing for like the water costs and everything. We were talking about doing it slowly and everything. And we decided, you know what, let's just do it all at once so that people aren't going, oh my gosh, you're raising it every single darn year. Well, if there's an ongoing need that we need to get taken care of, like for instance, I look back to my decision to not give the police particularly their full amounts. And I'm thinking that was stupid. I should have said, you know what, it's needed. We should just do it now, rip the Band-Aid off, get it over with. I'm just saying we got to look at it, both sides of it, because, you know, the county put us in this position. So it stinks.
Brody, may I add something?
Sure.
What I think is important to remember is we're not the only city that's dealing with this right now as well, because most every one of them is going to have a truth and taxation hearing because of paramedics.
Right.
North Davis Fire District has got a pretty healthy tax increase coming. And so it's kind of a concerted effort across the county. So it's going to be a shared thing. It's not going to be just Syracuse raising their taxes because of paramedics. And I think it's just important to remember that.
Thank you.
And that's fair.
Good point.
Again, I'm just trying to say, is there a way that we can cut that down? But
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the council, you know what you want to do. Is there, you know, you are the barometer of, you know, what is affordable, you know, when you say we can't afford that. So how much of an increase is too much, right? How much and what are the priorities and what should be funded and what shouldn't based on that.
And a lot of these are because we're a growing city, almost all of them. If we were more towards build out, we wouldn't be having these major growth problems of having to add so many personnel and or planners and or, you know, it's just.
Well, and then just, you know, I think Dave, you're kind of keying in on the fact that multiples come from the same department, but the message I was kind of hearing was that, you know, because this agency specifically is dependent upon growth, and growth is not always linear. And at some point it'll flatten out. I think that like the overtime and the consulting piece, those are efforts to do what you're, you know, kind of hoping to do and ensure that we're not getting ongoing obligation that we can't back out of. And so I think those ones make sense to me. On the communication specialist, for me, I was wondering, you know, as I was reading the description of services that you'd like this position to handle, is that something a part-time specialist can handle? It seemed ambitious to me, but you know.
so I mean, you know, there is a little bit of horse trading here, and one of those things is a couple of thoughts, and I'm not saying any of these are the right solution, they're just a solution. When you look at this and you say, okay, we need an engineering person that has GIS capabilities. Well, for years and years, we got both out of Noah because he had the same skill set. So could we, if we hired a planner who had GIS skills like we did when we hired Noah, put off the engineering tech for maybe another year because we had somebody that could maybe carry the first year? You know, that's one option. Another thing that came up is just as we're having this discussion is Corinne made a very good case for maybe we're getting some real benefit to the museum position. If we put off the communication specialist and put that into the museum, do we increase our tax base, our revenues for other things that maybe help us fund that in a future year? These are just kind of things that are going through my head, are where are the trades that, and maybe collectively, can we find in the whole budget 40K or 50K or something that means that we're not quite going, because I'd prefer if we didn't have to go above holding the rate. I believe that if we always were able to hold the rate without making a huge deal out of it, that makes sense for living within your budget. But I'm worried we're going to go considerably over. And so anyway, I'm just a little thought of where we might do some trading, but we don't have to make those decisions today. I'm just throwing out for where my mind's going with some of this.
Brody,
I appreciate that.
Brody, could you take just a minute and talk about specific assignments and specific individuals in the city? I know that the planner that we're talking about hiring also has GPS experience. I know that in the case of the museum curator, she also has experience with community outreach communications. So we're not hiring new people. We're just making one of them full-time and then just splitting her assignment between the museum and public relations.
See, that's completely new. I had no idea that was one of the considerations.
I didn't know that either.
So starting with the planner. So the planner, the idea is to hire a planner that has GIS experience, right?
Right.
For the mapping. And yeah, that would be the intent of that planner, to help out with that.
So that planner would help not only in Noah's department, would also help Robert.
Well, to some extent, the engineering tech actually goes out with a GPS unit, marks the location of various infrastructure, and spends a lot of time doing the data input work.
So it's different than a planner.
The planner is on the back end where you're doing all the analysis and the mapping based on that data that had already been inputted. So
they're not the same department or same person as your suggestion.
Right. No, it's engineering tech is in public works.
Right.
Right now we're paying our city attorney a city attorney's salary to do data entry stuff. So that we have data in our GIS system. And so but this is a really good discussion. This is what we do, right? We look and see what we want to, where our priorities lie. As far as the curator, she's tech savvy. She's not necessarily a communications person. And I don't think she particularly wants to do communications, but she's agreed to do it in order to be a curator. She's a history person and a curator, and we've just asked her to do a lot of the communications work. But
so she's becoming full-time, just under a different title, is what you're saying.
So if you were to combine those two, say, make her full-time, she's a full-time curator, we would just have to designate, okay, how much of her time are we going to reserve for communications? Because
sorry, I just have to say, you can finish, Brody. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if we carve out half of her time for communications activities, maybe she, first of all, I think she's a great museum curator, and I think she's a capable person, certainly, and she's extremely smart. So she could handle it. But in this request, I'm actually looking for someone who's done communications, because there's a whole different science to that.
That was my point. Yeah.
but, you know, we do what we do with what we have. So either
Are
way,
you saying like to begin with, this is what we could get away with in some fashion?
yeah, if that's what we got to do, then that's what we'll do.
Now,
And
Corinne,
I do have to say, sorry, that she's been really good at like advertising
Mhm.
different events and also tagging along with events going on at the city, like for instance, the Easter egg hunt, and they did their museum thing too, and combined pretty much that situation, got the information out to the public, which is exactly what part of that communication specialist job.
Yeah, and I would love for her to be full-time. I mean,
when
Interesting.
Corinne, when you talked about the need to make sure this position was full-time, and in fact, some individuals were saying they were going to step away, you know, because the need is there. Is it more about the position or the person?
It's about the fact how many hours they're putting in as volunteers, and they're feeling like they don't get a lot of city support.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So like if we, you know, if you pull her into full-time, she's
Yeah.
not giving any more support to the
Right.
museum.
Well, in a way, but at the same time, it's ensuring that would ensure, I feel like, that she would stay with the city
Oh,
longer, because another city would have to make her position full-time as well. You know what I mean? Whether it's full-time curator or something else, it would have to be full-time, and they'd have to at least match something that she's doing. To me, it would be an insurance that she would stay.
And is it kind of what we were doing with Annie at the end? Weren't you having her also try to do some crossover work for you?
yeah, but
And then
it
she
was
got taken.
part-time. It was part-time, and she wanted full-time. And I think Elizabeth's the same way. And
Yeah.
I think the message I got from Dean Hill, the president of the Museum Foundation. Yeah, he you know, he doesn't want this revolving door. You've heard us mention that about other staff. Like, you know, it's tough to get someone on board, trained up, you know, and actually get running, and then they leave.
Right.
Mhm.
I think
Like-
he's tired of that, or doesn't
Right.
want to see that.
Right. And one of the things that's interesting, like that Elizabeth has just recently done, is because of the announcement of the temple being built, and she's not of the LDS faith at all, and not even from Utah. And she though pursued the church in getting a pass to be able to attend the groundbreaking ceremony and stuff, so that she could record it for the museum. And they're actually going to allow her to come for that. And so, or at least that's their initial reaction. She hasn't received final word yet, but she's out there enough to say, hey, this is important for Syracuse history. Somebody should be there to record the event, and for officially to put in the museum. And to me, something like that, and that being able to put that out to the public and saying, hey, this is what happened in your city in 2021 or whatever, or just this month, depending on when you read it. I think that's really valuable and part of that communications of, hey, these are the good things going on in Syracuse. Anyway. Sorry.
No, that's good information. I mean, so it sounds like it's both, you know, they want some stability so that it's not this constant turnover, and then
Yeah.
she's a great fit as well.
And she's
Okay.
just, my point
And
in
you know-
telling that, yeah, sorry.
Sorry,
Go
we
ahead,
might
Lisa.
be thinking in terms of, well, we'd like our communications director to have this grand list, but some of those things are things you grow into, you know, and it may be that we start out with Elizabeth, and she becomes all the things that we need her to be over time. So I think it's a great idea to combine those two.
Well, and I'm just hearing some similarities to, aren't we supposed to be getting some of this out of our events coordinator from the rec department when we talk about, you know, combining events? And I don't think that they're doing a poor job. I think COVID has put a huge stop to all of the events that we used to have. But you know, what we're crediting Elizabeth for doing a little bit is also what we were hoping to get out of coordinating city events and promoting activities. And so
Now
We-
beyond all of this, I do agree that Brody has a point about a different animal in the communications of, say, what city council is doing and what planning commission is
Well,
doing.
and the branding piece and
Right. And that's maybe not in her wheelhouse, but maybe, anyway, I just think it's a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it's a good discussion. There's definitely an ideal situation where she's a full-time curator. She can grow the museum with that extra time and really like start producing, continue producing amazing things and even bigger and better things for the museum, and have a communications piece for the city to actually take care of our economic development goals and our public education and information on what the city is trying to do and trying to accomplish. But if that's not in the cards, then yeah, you have to kind of shoestring things together a little bit to make it work.
And I'd have to say that Brody and the staff is really good with giving us a set. We give them a set of parameters with money and personnel, and they're pretty good at weaving together a group of people that will accomplish the task. So I guess the question so much isn't, back before we had an events coordinator, we were talking about an events coordinator. Now we have an individual that is a full-time person that watches over the cemetery and the events, and we wouldn't think about dismissing her. So I think as we grow, there'll be a time when we can maybe afford a communications specialist to work strictly with the council and with the staff and getting word out. But I don't think that time is now.
The interesting way to think about it, because yeah, I do remember when we hired the events coordinator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it became full-time after a while, and and
Right.
now we wouldn't want to live without her. And I
Right.
think that we're kind of in that same boat with other things, but we just can't bite it all off at once. I do think about the people, and they're not everybody in our city, but we do have some people who say, look, I live on a fixed income, how
Sure.
bigger chunks of tax increase can be very difficult for those folks.
Yeah. So if we were to just look at that kind of in a vacuum, and if you were to make that trade-off, you would add, the curator full-time would be adding 40K. The communications, I think, was 33. So if we make that trade-off, then the tax increase, we'd go from 2370 to 2440.
Oh, really? That's it?
Yeah, because
That's just a thought.
because you're subtracting 33,000 out of the proposal, but you're adding 40.
Uh-huh.
So it goes, so you're looking at the 2370 here. You would just
Right.
add the extra 70 cents.
And
Well, and I do think about other things too, as far as like, I know we're going to add a full-time park maintenance person, but I keep thinking year after year, we talk about the 14 seasonals that we don't get and how our full-time people are overburdened. And I start to wonder, what's the cost of those 14 people versus the cost of somebody who should we just stop trying to get that many seasonals? And because we seem to chew away 2 or 3 at a time to make a part-timer that later becomes a full-timer. I'm just saying, if we can't get 14 full people, maybe we shouldn't continue to get or work up for 14 full people
Along
if we
those
ever get them.
What if we were to, and maybe we've already looked into this, and I know that we do this in some cases, but we've hired companies to come do some of our seasonal work, haven't we? To just kind of pick up our slack? Is that something we can continue in?
we
Yeah,
already
and
do
half the
that
time it's
with-
the jail.
Yeah, we
Oh.
already do
Which is
that with some of our, I can't think of what they're called, like our entryways in the community center.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all
And
been
things like
contract.
that. It's hard, they
Monuments.
charge a lot more, so it's hard to have them come in and say, hey, can you trim this park? And like, we have a high expectation, so there's some parks that we do 2 2 or 3 times a week, to make them look good. And a company is not going to come out that much. And if they do, they're going to charge us a lot to do it.
So it's not cost effective.
No,
at all.
we've looked into that. We've looked into bringing temporary, just hiring the temp workers to come in, but they'll come and work for 2 days and be like, oh, this is not the work for me. And then,
Yeah.
they leave. But, I've talked to Chad even about, we'll work towards getting more full-time and stuff. You're always going to need those seasonals. I mean, not like obviously the 14 of them if we get some more full-timers, but you're always going to need seasonals to help out. So you don't have everybody on a mow crew that are full-time, because we have so much with irrigation and trail. There's so much to do just for the full-timers. It has nothing to do with what would they do for the seasonals. Right now, they're just doing both jobs.
Yeah, and that's, I'd rather see us, the one thing that we've talked about before too, though, is that when you hire a full-timer, you get better quality than you get out of a seasonal. And,
Agreed.
And so maybe one of those things that I'm saying is we cut the seasonals in half, if that would give you another full-timer, because even though it's not, even though there's not that many mowers that one person can sit on, it's at least somebody we can count on every day of the year.
So when we look, let's look at those numbers. Krista, what was the budget for the seasonal mowers?
The seasonals right now, though, because Steve does such a great job of balancing the budget, he looks and sees we haven't done more than 45. So he'll just put in the 70, I think he's got 70,000 in there for seasonals this year. I'm just saying that we would need, if we were able to fill all those spots, we would need $140,000 to fill all those spots. I don't think you'll have to speak to that, Steve, but I think we didn't put all of that in.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you've got.
Correct. It was based on averages.
Okay.
Right.
Which is understandable, because when we're only getting 50,000 to budget 140, where you could use that somewhere else is, obviously.
I was thinking that we were end up surplusing that money every year. And I was of the thought process that if we didn't surplus it, but we got one full-time employee, we weren't losing anything. We were just gaining the help. That was what I was thinking, but maybe I'm not right on that.
Gotcha.
It sounds like the budget is not set though to the full 140, right? It's
Right.
just set closer to what
I think that right now it's at 70 for seasonals.
70 for the land maintenance workers.
Okay.
Weren't you saying though, in recent years, you've been spending about 43 rather than
45. In 2018, we spent 48,000.
So we
And
still
in 2019, we spent 45. So it honestly just depends on how many we can get and how long they stay. And we've actually been stretching out like to March to November trying to get it, but we've been told, you have to stay within the April to October range now. So we'll never be able to have those seasonal regardless in March or in October.
Now, and I know that was kind of more of a rule for, with Obamacare and having to make sure that people didn't work more than 6 months, at a full-time wage. But is that now with a mandate gone, is that still the problem, or why?
It is, because they say you have to, we're just finding this out. They're saying you have to keep your season within 6 months. We can't just because we thought maybe we could hire somebody in, August and go 6 months there. You cannot. If you have to just classify them as a seasonal employee, which would be April to October. And I know that Robert's going to have the same issue.
Because
this is just what we're barely finding out.
Yeah, mosquito abatement, they'll hire some of their seasonals, and they're titled seasonals, like in February, to start doing tree holes in February before the tree leaves come out, so they can actually find the tree holes. Anyway, and then they stay on through the summer and are through till October. So that's obviously more than 6 months. So I'm
wondering if they're hiring them on as part-time, because you can do that with part-timers. You just can't do it with seasonals.
Well, you gotta be careful. How many hours are they working, Corinne?
Well, it's like part-time until school's out, and then they go full-time as soon as school's out at the end of April, like college. And then as soon as college is out, then they go full-time through the whole summer. And then when college starts again, they go back to part-time. So that's how they do it.
Yeah, they're doing part-time workers, which is what we decided to try to do.
But they've been titled seasonal because they're only getting part-time hours for part of it. and then there's full-time in the summer, and then part-time again in the fall. But they're seriously titled seasonal, and that's
Yeah, they can be, you can title them seasonal part-time.
Oh,
Because they can
interesting.
go up to 40 on sometimes, and then it's the average that comes out. They can't go
Right.
above 28 on the average.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
and
part-time employee.
that's why they
I've
can
also
do it
been
because they got the
told-
part-times in February, March, and
Yeah.
half of April, and then August, or very, very end of August. So it's really September and October that they go back to the part-time, like 2 days a week.
So
I
is,
understand there's a new law that says that you have to designate the start and end date of the season.
You have to designate your season. That
Yeah,
can't be.
you cannot extend beyond that.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
We
Interesting.
actually got some clarification recently, and they told us that we're probably stretching. the
I'll have to
definition a
tell-
little bit.
I'll have to tell mosquito abatement then. Interesting.
so there's been some discussion regarding the line item for seasonals. So
Okay.
council, is there any
Sorry.
further discussion you want
Oh, yeah.
on possibly using some of that towards the
A full-time?
full-timer, and does Cresta have any comments on that?
Yeah, I want to know Cress's opinion on that. Would a
Well,
full-timer be
we're asking for the full-timer now, but we would need those seasonals if we can have them. Because again, it's only the 70,000, which would, if they were there for the 6 months, would only be, 7 of the 14 that we need.
wow.
It sounds like it needs to stay the same.
My
Yeah, I think
suggestion
the
was
money needs to
not,
stay the same. We're just saying we're bleeding over here. We need that, full-time
so-
person.
to be
And you
clear,
need
my
both.
suggestion was I totally understand your bleeding. And I
Yeah.
was thinking, could I get you a second one that you
Right.
could count on? I wasn't questioning the one that you have in there now.
Gotcha.
I
Thank
just-
you.
I do see how stretched you are when I run into one of your workers and I realize that they're putting in overtime like crazy because there's just no help.
Right. Thank you.
Along those lines, a lot of times you can save money by not having to pay the overtime,
Yeah.
by finding that position for someone.
Yeah, but it's always cheaper to pay overtime than it is to pay benefits.
That is true too.
Yeah,
But-
it's just, then it would just be better for Cresta, especially to not have somebody work to the breaking point.
Burnout factor. Yeah.
Yeah, which is
I'm
why we're asking the
personally-
FTE.
Yeah, I'm personally of the opinion that all the items that are outlined on this page, I think we have perpetually pushed all of these off, and year after year we see slides of how efficient our personnel are doing. And kudos to each of our departments for what you have been able to pull off. But I do think that it's time that we add these personnel. And so I hate all these tax increases and everything. But to something Steve said, once you factor out the paramedic increase, this is fairly equivalent to holding the rate. I would like to understand what that would be if it weren't for the paramedic increase. But I'm of the opinion that we need to fund all of these. I don't want to keep adding stuff in, but I think whatever we can do to bring these departments up to the point where they're not working tons of overtime, because burnout is real. Last year, I had several of my team members that were putting in 60, 80-hour weeks, and a lot of them are quitting. And that's at my work. And I think everywhere people are getting stressed, and our city staff, we've heard we can't afford to make mistakes in the city. You miss something in an inspection, or don't
Right.
quite get something resolved in a public works incident or something like that, and suddenly you're in the headlines. And I think we're to the point we are at a breaking point in a lot of these departments.
think-
Cresta, we've seen what you're doing. Robert, same thing. Fire, police, all of our departments. So I think these are very reasonable requests that if we can, if we think we can push this through and take some of the heat off of you guys, I think it's worthwhile.
The other thing that goes right along with that is that if we are growing so much, we just keep adding to
Yep.
their job. And we can't do that to them without helping them out.
Yeah, it's like any of the departments. Anytime we're increasing population, we know it's just going to continue. And that's a terrible thing to get. It's almost like not getting ahead of the pain. You know, when they say in the hospital, stay ahead of it so that you don't get in trouble. Well, we're already behind it in a lot of these areas. And now we're starting to see the pain, and it's going to take more to get rid of it.
So to answer your question on that, Jordan, Steve, do you have a kind of a calculation on if we didn't have the paramedics, what the tax situation would look like?
You're talking property tax?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if without the paramedics, what would the percentage be if we were to just hold the rate? Because I think holding the rate is extremely fair to adjust for inflation, because we all know material costs are astronomical right now.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a guessing game. I don't know what the
I
value
know.
will come back with. If it's 10 or 12%, which is probably realistic with how real estate's gone. I'd have to calculate it. I don't have a number for you right now.
I didn't think you did. That's why I said I'm happy if you'd get back to us. But
Yep.
What it sounds like is at 7.8, we're probably actually below holding the rate.
Right.
Yeah.
With inflation.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I want to be part of our message, is that all we're, holding the rate is just keeping up with inflation. And I think that is something that you're almost negligent if you're not able to do, because at that point you are falling behind, and a future city council is now trying to catch up, which is very tough to do.
And we've done a darn good job for the last 6 years. I'm just saying.
There are a
Catching
lot of things that have
catching up.
caught up in
Yes.
this last few years that
Yes.
we didn't, I do remember how terrible it sounded years ago.
Yeah. And
Yep.
it was because they wanted to stay, they wanted to look good and just kick the can. And then that always gets passed to somebody else. So
That's a disservice to everyone involved, especially the staff.
If that's kind of where you're settling, I want to be clear, how did you want to handle these items?
That's where I kind of want to understand what holding the rate would be. I liked the idea of trying to incorporate in at least one of these items.
I think the car slide, just my thought, if there's something to let go.
If the museum curator is going to take that communications position, if that's the intent, then I think that's a wash. So that one probably doesn't need to be added in, because
Right.
it's just a
Yeah, 'cause
matter of
if-
what we're calling it.
No,
And if we did
no,
both, we'd be,
Yeah.
But I think eventually we do need to separate those two, because we need someone in there that is specialized in communications. And
agreed.
But it could be a year from now.
Yeah.
It may be, but
For
if
budget
that gets us
purposes.
there, then yeah, let's pull that in and allow the communication/museum curator to really kind of head that up.
Yeah.
And
Start.
to be
start
fair, I
that.
just don't see how we do paramedic and traffic safety unit, which is multiple people in the same year.
Right.
So the real question is, could we manage the full PD benchmark?
And that one I would totally, I think we should advocate for. Golly.
I mean, I understand the importance, and I'm
Yeah.
open to it. I just,
Especially look at those recruiter posters. I mean, seriously, it's a stone's throw for those people to go to work at Clinton in pretty much the same environment.
I
Brody,
don't disagree. It's just, how do we keep close to our budget?
Right.
Is there something else we can trade for that? 'Cause
Right.
I could do that.
Right.
what did we promise, not promise, but what did we commit ourselves to, at least somewhat on an individual level last year? I was so new. I'm just trying to kind of recall where we got
We-
to
My
on the benchmark.
recollection was we would try to get that fixed this year, but
Right.
we couldn't fully promise it because we just don't know what the money is.
Sure, yeah. Just kind of a commitment to
We-
really,
We did a partial.
Mhm.
And then we said, okay, we've got to make sure to take care of these guys this coming year.
The
So
only issue we have is we've been zeroed in on the PD benchmark, but
Yeah.
every single department has this exact same problem.
are we,
that is true. That is true.
so are we 70% of the way just in the PD with the, I think it was like 93K? And then are we 70, where are we at? I know I obviously
We're
noticed
also
across the board, there was some,
We're
some
also
increase.
70 with the other two departments that we agreed to.
we are 70.
That's what I read in that memo, right,
Yeah.
Brody? Is
Yep.
that figure gets us 70% with all of the departments.
Okay.
Right,
This just would get us all the way in one department.
I
right.
see.
Yeah, so like I said, I would love to, just across the board, we got to work up to it. And I thought we were doing a good job keeping up, but these past 2 years, everything's gotten away from us. And I
Right.
don't know how.
Right. Well, part of it was our policy. If you remember, our policy didn't allow for those internal raises to happen inside while they were on the job. And
Sure,
we-
but that
we fixed a
doesn't
lot of that.
explain all of this.
No,
I think
I agree.
what,
It's the world. I mean, look at the inflation that's just happened we know it's getting worse. And we also see what happened with the police departments and the sentiments of society. And I think that there's just things that sometimes things just get away from you.
Go ahead, Brody.
and I was just gonna say, I think that, some of the things that we're struggling with as far as getting applicants
Right.
is happening across the board. And so you have just like a supply and demand issue going on
right.
across all the cities, probably in the whole state.
Right.
Of, if you don't have enough supply, then you gotta raise the price.
In
That's
fact,
what they've been doing.
I don't know what the unemployment is this month, but last month Utah was down to 4%. And that's the lowest in the whole nation. So I'm sure that since then it's gotten even worse. We're getting down to pre-COVID numbers for unemployment.
Yeah.
So
By worse, you mean better, right?
well, I'm just saying that there's not a lot of people to hire. If you're breathing, then they'll hire you, It's-
Well, and part of that too is that there were actually two pieces run on national news acknowledging Utah's tech boom right now.
right.
We've all known about it because we live here, but when you start acknowledging it nationwide on, a national news broadcast, what you're saying is that there are a lot of people getting good paying jobs in areas that they're maybe barely qualified in just because there's that many jobs. And when there's that many jobs and you look at some of the national media bash a certain profession, there's some people that maybe have that second thought.
What would the full benchmark get us to 100%, Brody or Steve, across all the affecteds?
Wow, that's a good question. This one is the cost of the big one.
1 billion dollars.
But this is like the price of a Big Mac. I seriously freak out about that. Going, really? We're talking about $5.30. Why is this so bad? So frustrating sometimes.
Really,
I know
it comes down
it's cumulative. It's the cumulative. I get
it
it.
comes down to if it's 5 cents, the fact that it's a tax increase freaks people out to start.
I know. I know.
But a
hear
level
you
of
too.
service is required, a minimum standard, and we can't just, again, kick that down the road.
Agree. But I think to answer your question, Corinne, it is the cumulative. Yes, it's $5, but you add enough of those and you're suddenly a grocery order.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. I just get
We do
frustrated.
grocery
because,
orders instead of grocery trips now.
I've just gotten frustrated because, if you've ever gone on a trip with youth, right? Okay. And they seem to like penny pinch for any sort of activity, but then you go to like any sort of restaurant and the money's just flowing out everywhere. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. You will hardly pay to do this activity. but man, you're going to pay a lot for food. Come on, what's the deal?
You're making a statement about the rational thinking
Yes.
of
Of
our
a teenager.
or a citizen or anybody for that matter, right? Or any of us.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you getting
Steve,
for the bang, for the buck, you know? Oh, well.
Steve,
Council-
you don't,
Council,
you,
what I hear you saying, and tell me if I'm wrong, that the traffic safety unit probably ought to be put on hold at least a year. I don't know that I disagree with that. That unit is going to be more effective once the front
West Davis.
West Davis corridor is in session.
Yeah.
I guess where we need to give them some direction is in these latter three. I heard Lisa said carpet in the halls. I walk these halls a lot, and they're not nearly as bad as they are at the community center, and the community center is part of the budget.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I say we hold off on carpet.
So
I do too.
Agreed.
the suggestions. So
I think
let's
if we walked in and that said something about the city and it was gross and we'd say, oh, this looks like a dilapidated building, that would be one thing. But I don't feel that way when I'm there. And it's not to say it couldn't be better, but we have so many other needs that this can go further down on the list, I think.
So let's give Brody and Steve some direction on these latter two.
I'd love to see the full benchmark.
Me
What did we decide? Seth asked what across the board, what would it be?
yeah, do you have that, Steve, by chance?
I'm looking at it. I don't have all the numbers in front of
It
me.
may be a future discussion.
We do have some time set aside on Tuesday night for any follow-up discussion.
Okay.
So
Rough estimate would be around 160,000, but I would like to get better numbers for you.
So that would
Okay.
like triple this figure.
Mhm. I think we all agree the last one is not really
It
a
was a
question right now,
trade-off
right?
with the other, yeah.
Yeah.
That one of those two is okay, but not both.
Brody mentioned that we have on the agenda for Tuesday night to continue this discussion. So there's nothing that needs to be made in concrete today. Are you happy if we send Steve out for some homework
Yes,
Mhm.
sir.
on the benchmark of the?
Is Steve okay with that?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
Great.
thanks, Steve.
So I mean,
One last thing that we're talking about is I'd just like to see a little bit more on the capital expenditures. We have some pretty big ones there. And I'm just wondering if,
hey, well, but can I make one more comment here about the
Yeah.
PD benchmark? I was just thinking, so if we have, if it triples that budget to bring everybody up to the full benchmark, could we, because we're already bringing quite a bit up across the board, could we look at what it would take to get, with that 50K evenly distributed, get everybody up to the 80% benchmark? Or, just to support all of our hardworking departments and
Yeah.
then commit, over a 2-year period again, to reevaluate this and keep bringing everybody up. Just a thought.
I'd like to see that too, Seth.
That's a very interesting approach.
yeah, so to my point, I guess, was I know that capital projects are kind of considered different, but they still come out of general fund. Is there any consideration for delaying some of that a year so that we could take care of other things this year? And I'm not throwing out a specific right now. I'm just trying to creatively think of ways that we can accomplish some of our tasks. And again, I realize capital funding is one-time money versus ongoing money, but
That might only get us like the carpet, right? Or,
well, I'm
something
not
that's
worried
not
about the
ongoing.
carpet as much as everybody at a full benchmark, but
that's what I'm saying. I don't think that a capital project delay would get us something ongoing, right?
Brody, can I
Right.
share my screen for a second? I would like to show our 5-year plan on capital.
Yeah, and once we settle on this, this property tax discussion, we still have the utility rate discussion to.
well, and that's kind of why this is so important, because it may be one thing to talk about a $50 tax increase, but you combine that with a $5 to $10 fees increase and every month, and that really starts to add up for folks.
So here's our 5-year plan. This second column is what we're talking about next year.
You've got your
You've got
Titan screen. shared.
SharePoint screen, not the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Let me stop sharing that for a second.
See, guys, it's not all that simple.
There we go. How's that?
There it is.
You got it.
All right, so this is the column we're talking about here.
Right.
This 5.4 million is two major land sales we've talked about that I've just set aside as an earmark. We can do whatever with it. But it takes away basically everything else in the fund to do what we're gonna do. And you can see over the next couple years, we're within $200,000 of funding all of our needs. If you were to push something off, I guess you could take that money and use it in general fund for other purposes. Every year we're transferring about $700,000 a year right now is what we've earmarked for capital from the general fund to go over to this fund. So, and we've done that to try to fund all of our projects or all of our capital over the next 5 years. So you can see there might be a little bit of wiggle room in here.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot. And if you delay something a year,
It gets bigger.
I guess you guys get more money in this fund, or you can use that money in the general fund as a one-time, but then you're sacrificing what you can do with some of our one-time costs here.
Right. It's kind of best to pay as you go along. It's kind of
So
a
I'm
good.
just thinking, we've got 3 vehicles in fire. Could one of those vehicles go into next year's budget and not be, and save us a little? I mean, seems like we just barely got the new engine. Wasn't it this year that we rolled it into the fire station? And here we are talking about another $1 million truck.
It wasn't a ladder truck though.
I know I hear you, but at the same time, we also just bought the new brush truck, and now we're replacing the chassis on the old one, which is better than replacing the whole truck. But
and you got to do it now versus the whole truck. If it
I know, I'm just wondering if there's any way that, if this 50K here gives us some flexibility there for a year. I don't have all the answers here, guys. I'm just trying to throw out some suggestions for how we might accomplish some of our bigger threats right now.
I'm just trying to think what would be applicable replacements. What do you then? What are the trade-offs when you cut out something like that? Because I don't think obviously we change anything on the tax side unless we swap it out.
I think if you look at what are we kicking down, what does that do to the year we kick it to? Do you know what I mean? Does that make that year really hard to meet that budget? So you got to make sure that whatever we decide to kick the can is feasible for the next year.
The Band-Aid approach versus the nickel and dime.
Anyway, well, those are just parts that are still moving parts in my mind. That are just throwing them out there, I guess.
Wait, if we just didn't have to do budgets,
Our budget
Federal government.
We have blank checks, right? If we just had the Federal Reserve,
we could print some money.
We need a printer, a mint.
Ooh.
Hey, Steve, when do you find out what the rate, the equivalent of holding the rate would be?
It's going to be pretty close to the June meeting. They don't usually have finalized appraisals and numbers until we meet with the county, usually first week of June. So
too late to really inform this discussion, huh?
And the last 2 years, it's been somewhere between like 8 and 13.
Last year was 8. The year before that was 12. And it's been pretty consistent in this, low single digits to high or low double digits. high single digits, low double digits. I'll get there eventually.
So, so if your goal here is to try to hold the rate, we can kind of estimate on what that might be, and then we can make adjustments, at that last meeting if we need to. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. We could use a number like 10%. If 10% is going to be holding the rate, then if that's the money you want to be able to use, then we can put the final touches on based on that. And then
We'll
once
have, sorry.
I'm just
You
gonna
go
say,
ahead, Steve.
once we know what the final rate is, we can make any adjustments, either keep it there or lower it, whatever you want to do.
Yeah,
We have
that's
to
what I was gonna say.
Shoot high and adjust, right?
Yeah.
Well, you have till middle of July before you have to, write that in stone, what the maximum dollar is going to be to go onto the property tax bills as they go out. So you'll have a little bit of time in the June work session if you want to talk about it, possibly the July business meeting, to kind of iron out what you guys want to do.
We definitely need this to be on those agendas to make sure that we're revisiting and making sure priorities are still where we think they, if anybody has a second thought or some lightning bolt hits us and we
Put some on each of those for sure.
So Mayor, maybe what we do is we put these last, if I'm hearing people correctly, do we put these last two items on this, the full benchmark and the full-time curator? Do we put them kind of like on the bubble, or do we want to make sure one or both are in there?
I think if the full-time curator we exchanged for the one that's already in the budget with the third.
The communications.
Communication. So I think that one's off the table.
So that one's included now.
Yeah.
So now we're just talking about the benchmark stuff, the remainder.
And we need to have an ongoing discussion of, okay, is it going to be 70%? Are we going to look across the board like Seth suggested and bring everybody to 80%? Or do we just go police at the full thing? So I think it's that one needs to be vetted more, the details of it.
And that sheet that you just showed us was different than the presentation in that the fire administrative truck is in next year's budget and the slide said it was in this year's budget. Because I have a little bit of a concern that we had 3 trucks when maybe we could get away with 2 this year and 1 next year.
You're talking about year 2022? When you say this year versus, you're talking about 2022.
Year 2023 had the administrative truck on the thing Steve brought up.
Okay, so it's a little farther up.
1 truck in 2022 for administrative, 1 truck in 2023 for administrative.
Oh,
so where the brush truck was on there too, separately?
Yeah, brush truck was on there, the ladder
1 administrative.
And 1 administrative, yep.
Okay.
Aaron just wants all new stuff, I guess.
His toys always cost the most.
Sorry, I should have said Chief Byington.
Well, let's do this.
I'm not trying to pick on him. I'm not.
It sounds like the museum thing we're united on. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, let's and what I'm hearing is let's have Steve do a little homework before our work meeting next week, and let's continue this discussion. In this point, we still have utilities to talk about, but let's have him bring some other information where the variable may slide a little bit between 70 and 80% of the benchmark. Does that sound okay?
It definitely needs to be discussed.
Okay.
Yes.
And Brody, let's move on to the utilities.
Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go on. You want to walk through, Steve, do you want to walk through this with everyone?
Sure. So with all the, we're talking about the 5 utility funds, 6 utility funds. These are the operational costs. We've seen most of these in the past, well, the top two. So culinary water, I think we're on year 5 of of 7 or so on their planned increases. It's a 30-cent increase for the Weaver Basin water price. Secondary water, similarly, we're still seeing increase in price shares. So this is not for new shares. This is just the increased price on existing shares. That's about 35 cents per user per month. And then the engineering tech, 26,000 of that 83 comes out of the general fund. The remaining 57,000 or so comes out of the utility funds, out of these 4 specific funds. And you can see how that's divided up. It's 53 cents over those 4 funds. And if you're probably wondering why isn't over 5 funds, we go through and do an analysis of how our public works employees allocate their time versus where they spend their time versus where their time is allocated. So I have a whole spreadsheet that calculates number of employees, where they work, and instead of having to go through and split up every public works employee through 6 different funds, it's easier to say I'm going to allocate this employee to this fund. For the most part, we have a few like Robert and Brian and some others that we do split across all the funds. But I do a reconciliation of that, so I know that we're allocating our time appropriately across the funds, and that's why there's in this allocation that goes across 4 of those 5 funds. So the total cost. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just a quick question about the engineering tech though, because that's also in the other discussion too. So is wages kind of split across general and utility then?
Yeah, so 26,000 of the 83 comes out of general fund. In addition to this, 53 cents is about $57,000.
Is that taken into consideration? Because we just had 83 listed on the general for that position. Is that into consideration that it's actually a little less for the
So that
general?
83 on the 4th slide showed it's not all coming out of general fund. That was just showing it was one of the big
Ticket.
new asks or new positions that were requested.
Yeah, it had multi-fund in parentheses.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that part.
To
Okay.
show that it's across everything.
Okay. Thank you.
So on the next slide, Brody, the total cost of these items is $1.18. One other proposal that we are proposing is to move $1.50 from sewer over to secondary. The average user will not see that change unless they saw the bill, but in total, the net change is 0.
Okay.
And this is to help fund our 5-year plan. And it gets us further down the list. If we didn't do this, secondary water would be in a negative position in this next fiscal year.
It's a good move.
Mm-hmm.
Is that 8 cents on the storm? Is that going to be adequate? Because it seems like we're like, it's kind of like people who live paycheck to paycheck. We're living one fiscal year to another with storm. So just wondering.
What do you mean by
The
adequate?
8 cents is towards the engineering tech. It's not the whole bill.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't understand that subset right there. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. That's the sum of the parts. Yep.
Thank you.
And the only other thing that I want to bring up on the horizon, we didn't want to propose any capital increases this year, but in next year, like 2023 timeframe, the storm fund will actually go negative if we don't do anything about it.
Right. That's where I was going, but
We are living
the wrong
paycheck to paycheck.
We are.
Yeah. So and it's up to you, council, what you want to do. We didn't feel like we want to propose that right out of the gate.
But would we want to just round up storm fund to an even 10 cents and start to slow the bleeding?
No,
10 cents is probably going to be like $5,000. It won't be a whole lot, but
it's better than not having $5,000.
This is true. This is true. Yeah, whatever you guys want to do, that's.
I say we go 11 cents then. That way we can have $7,500.
Because these amps go to 11.
Yes.
All right. 11. Thank you. But why? Because ours goes to 11. That's why.
So yeah,
Maybe
if you
we-
want to
maybe
make
we
it
think
an
about that.
even $1.20 across all funds, then we can do that.
That's not a bad idea. But we should have it go to storm so they don't go negative, the extra.
Yeah.
I hate forecasting negatives.
Yes.
That's,
you know, it's-
that's saying we know there's a problem that we're not going to fix yet.
Well, you do have you do have another bite at the apple at next year's budget as well.
Right.
I think that's what Steve's saying is we can do something now, but you do get another shot at
We
it.
just felt like it was a bit much with a pretty hefty tax increase to also
I
What
agree
is-
with that.
utility rate.
Yeah.
I have to agree with that.
All right.
Okay, I think that was it on my slides, Brody.
Okay.
Yeah, that adds up.
Any other discussion on utilities?
I do think we ought to go to the 120 and just add that extra 2 cents in there just to slow the bleed until we get there.
I've made that note.
Kind of like putting on a tourniquet. Doesn't fix it, but you might not die.
Ebbs and flow.
I
I
don't
don't
know,
know, a tourniquet's pretty good. I think this is more like
You can't
Um,
live with them forever is my point.
this is more like throwing a dish rag on a leaking pipe.
Oh, well, that's true. At least you
For
don't hear the
$1.20, you're
drip.
asking people to give up a value Frosty every single month.
Oh my man. Can't live without my ice cream. Golly, but boy, I can sure do without water.
If you like,
Okay.
we can post a picture of that broken clay pipe that I showed you, if that helps.
Thank you.
With a dish rag on
Really
it.
be in the newsletter or somewhere. Yeah, big picture of that. Look at what your money could go for. A Frosty or some new pipes.
So by the way, that
Of the two, I can
11
tell you which one is more delicious.
that 1,000 West, we were planning on the 2023 fiscal year because
Oh,
we were going to wait till 500 West. 500 West will go to construction this year,
okay.
like July, and then last 12 months. Then we can close down 1,000 West next year and detour traffic onto the new 500 West. So
Nice.
that's just a by the way.
So the 500 West, is that going to have the light and everything?
Yeah.
By fall?
Well,
Maybe?
construction will start in July, but it'll be a 12-month construction. So
Okay. Awesome.
So the answer is no.
But it will be, it's happening though. It's actually going forward. I love it.
Tell them to start in June.
Yeah, I think that's all we had, Mayor.
Are we going to get out early?
I do have to announce that my daughter just made cheerleader. So if you notice, I was kind of distracted for a little while. She's pretty excited about that.
Nice. Congrats.
Nice.
Can I share my screen then, Brody?
Oh, yeah.
Let me go back. Let me come back here. And you remember this guy, as we were starting to talk about money.
He looks pensive.
Does look
Hmm.
active, doesn't he?
He's us.
I looked all over for something to get us into a discussion, and we're not going to be here long, maybe 10 minutes. But I wanted to get into a little bit of a discussion about those of us that are elected and how the residents and the staff take their cues from us. So I found this real interesting cartoon. And because I turned 71 today, it has to do with age. So bear with me, will you?
Is that graffiti?
Does look like graffiti.
The only history I know is my own. I'd like to tell you a story about my father and Senator Wallace Bennett. Senator Bennett was elected to represent the state of Utah in 1951. I was 1 year old when he was elected. And then he didn't run again. He retired in 1974. During those years, my father was the state specialist for vocational education. He was actually a staffer for the state of Utah, involving industrial education. He had a PhD in education, and he was responsible for all of the colleges like Slick. Slick started out as a community college and was a vocational school. And my dad oversaw all of those. And he was constantly in contact with Wallace Bennett. And my dad told me a story about one time when he was trying to tell Wallace Bennett what the needs were in the state of Utah in relationship to vocational education. And this is the comment that Wallace Bennett said to my dad: "Go home, schoolboy, I know what you need." And that really irked my father. He never thought much of him after that time period. And he couldn't believe that a senator from the state of Utah who was called to represent the state would tell someone who was lobbying for money from DC to come back to the state to say, "I know what you need. I see things different than you do. So go home and I'll tell you what you need." Now, I have now been involved with city government now for 7.5 years. I see things differently than I saw 7.5 years ago. I think most of us do. I know, Corinne, you and I have talked about that. Lisa, we've talked about it. Dave, you and I have talked about it. We've all talked about it, that it's pretty easy to say to our constituencies, go home, we know what you need, because we see from 30,000 feet. And yet our residents are going to see the way my father did. They're going to say, well, how do you know my needs unless I tell you? And if you won't listen, you're sending me home. So it seems to be a catch-22 in what the city really needs. And I wanted to just express how proud I am of both the staff and the elected officials that are here, that we've managed today, and we've done well. It was already been said that in 6 or 7 years, we've come a long way. What I'd like to talk about now is this kind of idea. That's
It's just a flesh wound.
It's just a flesh wound. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
See, now if we had EMTs.
Yeah, we had EMTs to solve that. What I would like to do is talk a little bit about a formation.
That's a paramedic job, for the record. I don't know if the EMTs are going to work that one through.
It'll take a lot more than 9 as well.
Yeah. I don't know how many of you have heard of the Testudo formation.
Yep.
But it's a Roman formation where, as a group, they would put their shields on top of their heads and to the sides to make sure that nothing ever happened, that if they could defend themselves from the flight of arrows, this guy could have been protected if he'd had others around him with shields up, and he wouldn't have been shot. What I'd like to talk about is particularly to those of us who are elected officials. Sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot. And what I mean is that we get ourselves in a situation where we let down our guard, and we let social media and we let other things tell half-truths. And somehow we've let an arrow in to protect one another. I'd like to ask us to be very, very careful of what we post on social media, because we are a very effective group. When we protect each other from that, we do really see from 30,000 feet. I've got it, while we've been in this session, I've answered 2 or 3 emails to people about secondary water. They don't see from 30,000 feet. They don't understand what's been done in northern Utah, in other cities. They don't understand that what a water share is. It's just a part of the pie. We can't buy more pie this year because there is no more pie. And we understand that, but what they see is just a bill that they pay every year or every month, whether there's water or not. So they don't understand that. So I want to just congratulate all of us, staff as well as our elected officials. I really think we've done a bang-up job in the last 6 or 7 years. And I wish this group could continue. If it were my wish, I wish it would continue for another 4 or 5 or 6, because I think this inflection point in the city, you mentioned it today, we're a growing city. We won't have these problems at build out. At build out, it'll be a piece of cake to be on the city council, be a piece of cake to be a staff member. But we are the place right now where the press is really pressing the wine. And I think we've done a pretty good job at seeing from 30,000 feet. So what I'd like to invite you to do is go home and take a nice bath.
All right, this isn't so bad. I like the flowery smell, which is okay because I've got my boat.
So?
Oh my.
I told you were a bath person. Hey, when you get out, maybe I can give you a facial.
I'm gonna need a bigger boat.
So I just want to thank all of you for coming today. It's been a delight to work with all of you. I want to thank Brody and Cassie and Steve and those that have put this together for all of us. I say this a lot, but from behind the scenes, I see the thousands. It really is thousands and thousands of hours that are put into this meeting and the one that was a precursor to this one that we did in January to help us arrive at a budget. And thank goodness we are required to budget. That's the greatest blessing to the city residents. You know, if we had a mint and could print our own money, the whole country would go down in smoke. The best government is represented by just this little 9 square mile piece of property. So thank you. Have a good day and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Thanks, guys. Bye.